When I last closed my eyes as a free man, I was 23 years old and had shot down 352 Soviet aircraft. When I opened them again, I was on the frozen floor of a cell in Siberia, and the interrogator before me had just placed a wager, 800,000 rubles. He wagered 800,000 rubles that I wouldn't last 10 years in the Gulag. My name is Hartmann, and this is the story of how I proved him wrong. But before I recount how I survived the Soviet hell, I need to tell you why they hated me so intensely. Why a mere German pilot was deemed worthy of a life sentence and a death wager. It was May 1945. The war had ended just 8 days prior. I was in Czechoslovakia with my squadron when we received the order to surrender. We had two options: surrender to the Soviets in the east or to the Americans in the west. It was not a difficult decision. I flew my Messerschmitt Bf 109 for the last time that day. I ran my hand over the control panel, smelled the oil and hot metal, listened to the rumble of the engine that had saved me so many times, 352 times. That was my record. 352 confirmed aerial victories, the highest tally in the history of combat aviation. A number the Soviets knew all too well. A number that made them tremble with rage. We landed on American territory, and for a few weeks, I thought everything was fine. The Americans treated us with respect. We were pilots, after all. There was a code between us. But then the Yalta agreements came into effect. The Soviets demanded our repatriation. They claimed we had committed war crimes, that 352 victories signified 352 murders. The Americans had no choice. I remember the day we were loaded onto the trucks. I remember the faces of the American soldiers. They knew exactly what awaited us. A lieutenant approached me before they departed. "Good luck, Blonde Knight," he said in a low voice. Blonde Knight, that's what they called me. I offered no reply. I merely nodded. I didn't know I wouldn't see the sun rise as a free man for the next 10 years. The journey to the prison camp lasted 3 weeks. We were transported in cattle cars, 60 men per car. Without adequate food, without clean water, without room to sit. The stench was unbearable. Sweat, urine, feces, vomit. 3 men perished during the journey. Their bodies remained with us for days until the guards finally removed them. Upon arrival, we were escorted to an interrogation building. Gray walls, concrete floor, a lone bulb dangling from the ceiling. It was there I met Major Petrov. He was a short, stout man with small, cruel eyes. He smoked cheap cigarettes, leaving a lingering, acrid odor in the air. Hartmann, he uttered my name slowly, savoring each syllable, the great German ace, the slayer of 352 Soviet pilots. I remained silent. "Do you know how many families have mourned because of you?" He stepped closer. "How many wives were widowed? How many children grew up fatherless?" I maintained my silence. He slammed his fist on the table. "Answer me! I was a soldier," I retorted. "Just like them." Petrov let out a laugh, a short, dry, humorless sound. "A soldier," he echoed. "No, you are a war criminal, and you will pay for every life you have taken." It was then that he proposed the wager. He summoned another officer into the room, a younger man in an immaculate uniform. "Colonel Sokolov," Petrov stated, "how long do you reckon this Nazi dog will endure in the Gulag?" Sokolov scrutinized me from head to toe. I was emaciated, grimy, and utterly exhausted. 5 years, he responded, at most. Petrov shook his head. "I posit less. Wager with me." 800,000 rubles that he won't see 10 years. They sealed the agreement with a handshake before me. 800,000 rubles. That sum surpassed what an average Soviet laborer would accrue in 2 decades, and they were wagering on my demise. Petrov turned to me once more. "You're bound for Camp 48, Hartmann. A 25-year sentence. Forced labor. Meager rations. Winter temperatures plummeting to 40 degrees below zero." He leaned in until I could feel his hot, fetid breath on my face. "And when you perish, and you will perish, I shall be a very wealthy man." I was dragged from the room. I was thrown into a truck with other prisoners. And thus began the journey northward, to Siberia, to the Gulag. As the truck rumbled along the rutted road, my thoughts drifted to my wife, Ursula. We had married shortly before the war's conclusion. She had been pregnant when I was apprehended. Did she even know I was still alive? Would our son be born never knowing his father? I gazed through the truck's dirty window. Endless forests, a gray sky, a penetrating chill even in summer. And then I swore an oath to myself. No matter what transpired, no matter how long it took, no matter how much pain I would have to endure, I would survive. It would last 10 years, and I would see the look on Petrov's face when he realized he had lost his wager. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was what truly lay in store for us at Camp 48. The real hell was yet to come. Camp 48 was not a place. It was a death sentence by another name. We arrived in late August 1945 when Siberia still feigned habitability. But I could sense it in the air. Winter was approaching, and with it, the true trial. The camp lay 200 kilometers north of Novokuznetsk. Barbed wire fences, watchtowers, wooden barracks that seemed on the verge of collapse, and the cold. Even in August, the cold already bit to the bone. We were met by Commander Khrushchev, a tall, gaunt man, his face etched with deep scars. It was said he had been tortured by the Germans during the war. Rumor had it he despised Germans more than anything else on earth. "Welcome to the socialist paradise," he bellowed, as we were herded into formation in the yard. "Here you will atone for your debts to the Soviet people. Here you will learn the true meaning of justice." He spat on the ground. "The weak will perish, the strong will toil, and all of you will be forgotten." It was not a motivational speech. It was a promise. I was assigned to Barracks 7, 60 men crammed into a space designed for 20. Triple-tiered bunks, blankets as thin as parchment. A mere hole in the ground served as our latrine. The stench was worse than in the cattle cars. Far worse. I secured a berth on the middle bunk. The man above me was a former German soldier named Klaus. The man below was Ukrainian. He spoke no German, and I no Russian. But the silence said it all. We were all condemned. The first workday commenced at 5 in the morning. A piercing siren rent the air. We had 10 minutes to relieve ourselves, don our work attire, and fall into formation in the yard. Breakfast consisted of a thin cabbage soup and a piece of black bread, hard as a rock. 150 grams of bread, a cup of soup. That was all. Nothing more until dinner. We were led into the forest. Our task was simple: to cut down trees, large Siberian pines that had taken decades to grow. We had to fell 20 trees a day. Each man, 20 trees, or we'd lose half our food ration. The axes were old, poorly sharpened. Our hands began to bleed on the very first day. By the third day, the blisters had burst, and the pain became constant, a throbbing ache, impossible to ignore. But we couldn't stop. Klaus worked beside me. He had been a tank driver, strong hands, broad shoulders. Yet even he struggled. "How many do you think will survive the winter?" he asked during a break. I looked around. 60 men in our barrack, over 500 in the entire camp. "Half," I replied, "if we're lucky." Klaus shook his head. "Fewer, far fewer." He was right. Winter arrived in October. It came like an all-consuming monster. The temperature plummeted to 20 degrees below zero, then 30, then 40. Our work clothes were utterly inadequate. Thin jackets, boots riddled with holes, gloves that offered no protection whatsoever. The cold seeped into our very bones. It burned our lungs, freezing our fingers until we could no longer feel if they were still there. But we had to keep working. 20 trees a day, every single day, without fail. The first man died in November, a Pole named Jerzy. He simply collapsed while felling a tree. His heart gave out. The cold had won. The guards dragged his body away and left it outside the barrack for 3 days. A stark reminder, a warning. The second died a week later, pneumonia. He coughed blood for 2 days before finally giving up. The third froze to death overnight. He fell asleep and never woke up. His body was rigid when we tried to move it in the morning. December was worse. We lost 7 men in December. The cold now held steady at 45 degrees below zero. Work in the forest became an indescribable torment. Every breath was agony, every movement a battle. My fingers turned black with frostbite. The camp doctor, if he could even be called that, said he might have to amputate. "Keep them moving," he said. "Don't let the blood stop." I spent the nights rubbing my fingers, forcing the blood to circulate. The pain was excruciating, but the alternative was worse. Klaus lost 2 toes on his left foot. Gangrene. They had to amputate without anesthesia. I held him while the doctor sawed. His screams echoed through the barrack all night long, but the cold wasn't the worst of it. Nor was the hunger. It wasn't even the grueling labor. The worst was the hopelessness. You could see it in the men's eyes, the light slowly dimming, resignation taking hold the moment they simply ceased to fight. Some threw themselves against the electrified fences. A swift death was preferable to slow suffering. Others simply sat in the snow and waited. They froze to death in peace. I understood the temptation. There were nights I gazed at the fence and contemplated how easy it would be, how swiftly it would end, to cease everything in seconds. But then I recalled Petrov's wager. 800,000 rubles that I wouldn't last 10 years, and the rage would return. That son of a bitch wasn't going to win his money. Not on my account. I began to cultivate a routine, a regimen that kept me alive, kept me sane. Every morning, before the siren, I would wake 5 minutes early. I'd close my eyes and envision flying. I'd picture the roar of the engine, the wind on my face, the absolute freedom of the open sky. I'd imagine Ursula, my son whom I had never met, our home to which I would one day return. They weren't merely dreams. They were anchors. They were reasons to endure another day. And then, in January of 1946, something shifted. A new prisoner arrived. His name was Dmitry Volkov, and he was Soviet, a Soviet pilot. When they discovered my identity, the other Russian prisoners shunned me. I was the Blonde Knight, the slayer of 352 of their own. But Dmitry was different. He sat beside me during supper. He looked at me with weary, yet still vibrant eyes. "Erich Hartmann," he uttered in broken German. "I flew against you. Twice." I remained silent. "The first time you nearly killed me. The second time I escaped before you could even attempt it." He smiled. A sorrowful smile. "You were good. Better than any of us." "Why are you telling me this?" I inquired. "Because we're in the same hell now," he replied. "And old enmities mean nothing when we're all dying." He extended his hand. I clasped it. It was then that I perceived something significant. Something that would alter everything. I was not alone. And if I was not alone, there was hope. But what I didn't know was that Dmitry harbored a secret. A secret about what truly transpired at Camp 48. A secret that, once unearthed, nearly cost us our lives. Dmitry Volkov imparted to me the first rule of survival in the Gulag. Never fully trust anyone. The second rule, there's always someone watching. It took me 3 weeks to comprehend why a Soviet pilot was incarcerated in the same camp as German war criminals. Dmitry refused to discuss it. He adroitly parried the subject whenever anyone inquired. Until the night Klaus died. It was February. The cold had abated to a mere 30 degrees below zero, which to us felt almost tropical. Klaus had survived the amputation of his fingers, but the infection had spread. He passed away silently during the night. When we awoke, his body lay rigid on the bunk beside me. His eyes still open, fixated on the rotting wooden ceiling. I gently closed his eyelids. We were 51 now. 9 had perished since our arrival, and winter had yet to relinquish its grip. That night, after Klaus's body had been removed, Dmitry approached me. He glanced around to ensure no one was privy to our conversation. "I need to confide something in you," he whispered. "Something that might keep us alive." "What is it?" "Not here. Tomorrow, in the forest, away from the guards. During work the following day, we seized an opportune moment." The guards were otherwise engaged, smoking and conversing near the truck. Dmitry pulled me behind a stack of logs. "I am no war criminal," he began. "I am a traitor. At least that is what they claim." "What transgressions did you commit?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was accused of sympathizing with the West, of questioning Stalin, of thinking too much. He spat into the snow. But the truth is, I witnessed something. Something I should never have seen. What was it? Dmitri took a deep breath. 3 years ago, before the war concluded, I was stationed near Katyn. Are you aware of what transpired at Katyn? I shook my head in negation. 22,000 Polish officers, executed by the NKVD. A single bullet to the back of the head, each, buried in mass graves. My stomach churned. The Soviets implicated the Germans. They claimed it was your doing. But I saw the documents. I saw the orders signed by Beria, by Stalin himself. And did you speak of it? No. But my commanding officer discerned that I knew. And he had me sent here to ensure I would never speak. He looked directly into my eyes. This camp isn't just for Germans, Eric. It's for anyone who knows too much. Anyone who poses a risk to the regime. Only then did I grasp the truth. Camp 48 was not merely a labor camp. It was a graveyard, a place where secrets came to die. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because there are others like me here, Soviets who have seen things, who know things. And there's a plan. My heart raced. What kind of plan? Escape. The word landed like a bombshell between us. Escape from a Siberian gulag was deemed impossible. The electrified fences, the watchtowers, the dogs, the endless taiga, the lethal cold. And even if one were to manage an escape, where would they go? We were hundreds of miles from the nearest civilization. You're insane, I said. Probably. But what alternative do we have? Wait 10 years? 25 years? Do you think any of us will last that long? He was right. Of the 51 people in our barracks, I'd give it another 6 months before perhaps 20 remained. How many are involved? 12. Some Germans, some Russians. We have a man in the kitchen, another in the maintenance workshop. We've been hoarding provisions for months. When? Spring, April, perhaps May. When the ice thaws sufficiently for us to ford the river, when there's forage in the woods, when we have a chance. A chance, not a guarantee, just a chance. But it was more than we had now. I'm in, I said. Dmitri nodded. I'll introduce you to the others, but exercise caution. Informants are ubiquitous. One wrong move, and we'll all end up in the hole. The hole. That's what they called solitary confinement. A 3-square-meter cell, no light, no warmth, no proper sustenance. Men entered the hole and emerged deranged, assuming they emerged at all. In the ensuing weeks, I met the other members of the group. Mikhail, the cook, a Georgian who pilfered meager portions of food and stashed them in buried tins near the barracks. Victor, the mechanic, who was amassing tools and warm clothing. And then there was Anton. Anton was unlike the rest of us, small, gaunt, with eyes that seemed to pierce through people. He was Ukrainian. He had been a priest before the war. A priest and a criminal? I asked when we first met. Prayer became a crime under Stalin's regime, he replied with a bitter smile. God is a competitor to the state. Anton. He was the mastermind behind the plan. He studied the guards, memorized their patterns, and identified their weaknesses. There's a 3-minute window, he explained to me one night. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 in the morning, when the shifts change. The guards in the West Tower and the East Tower rotate simultaneously. For 3 minutes, there's a blind spot. 3 minutes for 12 men to traverse the fence? Not through the fence, underneath it. Victor had pilfered wire cutters. Anton had identified a patch of looser soil where we could dig a shallow tunnel beneath the fence in a matter of minutes. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was our only chance. But then, in March, everything nearly unraveled. A new commander arrived. Commander Khrushchev had been transferred. In his stead came Colonel Sokolov, the same Colonel Sokolov who had witnessed Petrov make the wager on my life. He recognized me instantly. On his second day at the camp, I was summoned to the administration office. Sokolov sat behind the desk, smoking a thick cigar. Hartmann, he said, you're still alive. Yes, sir. Surprising. Petrov will be sorely disappointed. He rose and walked around me, scrutinizing me like livestock. You've lost weight. You're frail. Ailing, perhaps. I'm fine, sir. Liar. He chuckled. But you know what? I'm rooting for you. Know why? I remained silent. Because I made my own wager. I bet Petrov that you would outlast 10 years. 15, perhaps. I bet you're too obstinate to perish. He returned to his seat behind the desk. So do me a favor, Hartmann. Stay alive. Ensure I win my money. It was a surreal moment. 2 Soviet officers wagering on my life as if it were a horse race. But it was also a warning. Sokolov was monitoring me closely. When I returned to the barracks, I told Dmitri about the encounter. That's ill tidings, he said. Very ill tidings. If he's monitoring you, he'll discern anything out of the ordinary. So what do we do? Anton, who had been listening, replied, We revise the plan. We don't wait until May. We go in April, on the 1st of April. But the ice will still be thick. We won't be able to traverse the river. We won't traverse the river. We'll go through the forest, to the south. It's more perilous, but Sokolov won't anticipate that. I gazed at the faces around me. 12 desperate men, 12 men willing to risk it all. April Fools, I said, I'm in. But what none of us realized was that a turncoat lurked among us, and he had already divulged everything to Sokolov. The traitor was Mikhail. We discovered this at the most inauspicious moment imaginable. 3 days prior to the breakout, Viktor spotted him exiting Sokolov's office at 2 in the morning. When we confronted Mikhail the following day, he didn't even attempt a denial. They promised to commute my sentence, he stammered, his voice quavering. They vowed to transfer me to a more lenient camp. I have a daughter. I must see her again. Dmitri seized him by the throat. You've condemned us all. No, Mikhail gasped. I didn't disclose everything. I merely mentioned whispers of an escape, but I provided no names, no specifics. Liar. Anton pulled us apart. It's irrelevant now what he divulged. Sokolov is aware. We have but 2 choices. Abandon the plan or accelerate it. Accelerate to when? I queried. Tonight. A heavy silence descended upon us. We were ill-prepared. Supplies were scarce. Our planning was incomplete. The odds of success were virtually non-existent, yet remaining meant certain demise. Sokolov would apprehend us one by one. Interrogation, torment, the whole, followed by execution. Tonight, Dmitri conceded. At 300 hours, we endured the day in silent torment. Each second stretched into an eternity. Every fleeting glance from a guard appeared pregnant with suspicion. At 2200 hours, our sole advantage finally materialized. A blizzard. The wind shrieked like a pack of wolves. The snow descended with such ferocity that visibility was reduced to mere 10 feet. The watchtowers were rendered blind. It was now or never. At 2:45, we began our movement. One by one, in hushed silence. Anton took the lead. Viktor followed close behind with the implements. We arrived at the perimeter fence at 2:58. Viktor commenced digging feverishly. The ground was unyielding, partially frozen. Every precious second was critical. 300 hours. The changing of the guard commenced. 3 minutes. Basta, Dmitri whispered. Viktor excavated with frenzied abandon. His fingers bled freely. The aperture widened. 2 minutes. Ready, Viktor said. The aperture was constricted. We would be forced to crawl through. Anton proceeded first. He slithered beneath the fence like a serpent. On the far side, he gestured, then Viktor, then Dmitri. 1 minute. 3 men had already slipped through when I perceived the lights, searchlights piercing the blizzard, shrieks, gunshots. Run! Dmitri bellowed from the far side. I plunged into the aperture. The compacted earth constricted my body. Above me, I heard gunshots. A searing warmth blossomed on my shoulder. Pain. I was hit, but I didn't stop. I crawled. I pulled. I fought. And finally, I broke through. On the other side of the fence, hands pulled me through. We began to sprint towards the forest. More gunshots, screams, dogs barking. I glanced back. 5 men were still trapped on the other side, Anton among them. I saw Sokolov emerge into the courtyard. I watched him point at the trapped men. I saw the guards raise their weapons, and then I ran. I ran through the dark forest, blood streaming down my arm. I ran knowing that 7 men had been left behind. I ran knowing that we were probably all doomed anyway, but at least I would die free, or so I thought. Because what transpired over the next 72 hours was worse than any nightmare I could have ever conceived. We survived 36 hours in the forest. There were 7 of us. Dmitri, Victor, myself, and 4 others whose names I barely had time to learn. The night's cold was lethal, 40 degrees below zero. My shoulder bled. Every step was agony. The dogs caught up to us at dawn on the 2nd day. We heard their barks drawing nearer. We saw the torches flickering through the trees. There was nowhere left to run. We were exhausted, frozen, dying. Dmitri looked at me. "It was a good attempt, my friend." "It was." The guards surrounded us, 20 armed men, and in their midst, mounted on a horse, was Sokolov. He dismounted slowly, savoring the moment. 7, he uttered, counting on his finger. Only 7 had the courage to make it over the fence. The other 5 I executed on the spot. Cowards. He walked up to me. "And you, Hartmann. Did you truly believe you would escape? You, the great ace, the blonde knight?" I spat blood at his feet. "Go to hell," he smiled. "No, you are the one who's going. Back to the hole. All of you. And this time, you won't come out alive." We were dragged back to the camp, chained, beaten, thrown into separate cells. The cell was 1.5 meters wide, 2 meters long, no window, no light. The floor was packed, frozen dirt. I was given 1 cup of water a day, a slice of bread every 3 days. I lost all sense of time. Days bled into weeks, or were they hours? I could no longer distinguish. Complete darkness plays tricks on your mind. You begin to see things that aren't there. Hear voices. Converse with ghosts. I conversed with Klaus. With the pilots I had shot down, with my deceased father. And I conversed with Ursula. "Hold on," she'd say. "Just a little longer. Our son needs you." I didn't know if they were hallucinations or something more, but those voices kept me alive. After an immeasurable amount of time, the door opened. Light exploded into my eyes. Blinding pain. Hands dragged me out. I could barely stand. My legs wouldn't respond. Sokolov was waiting. 6 weeks, he said. "You spent 6 weeks in the hole. Impressive. Dmitri died in the 3rd. Victor in the 5th. You're the last one." He lit a cigarette. "Do you know what that means? It means Petrov lost his bet. You've already surpassed the minimum 10 years of expected survival. Technically, I won." He blew smoke into my face. "But here's the problem, Hartmann. I gain nothing if you remain alive. In fact, it would be far more convenient if you simply died now." He drew his pistol. He aimed it at my head. "Any last words?" I looked him in the eyes. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left. "I'll see you in hell." He pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. Sokolov laughed, a loud, cruel guffaw. "Not today, Hartmann. Not yet. I still have plans for you." I was thrown back into the barracks. The prisoners stared at me as if I were a ghost, and perhaps I was. I weighed 42 kilograms. I could barely lift my arms. My body was nothing but skin and bones. But I was alive. And I remained alive, day after day, month after month, year after year. 1946 turned into 47, 47 into 48. The years dragged on like open wounds. In 1952, Stalin died. Things slowly began to change in the camp. Fewer executions, more food, some prisoners being released, but not me, not the blonde knight. Finally, in October 1955, I received news. Liberation. 10 years and 5 months after my capture, I was handed civilian clothes, 50 rubles, and a train ticket. "You are free to go," said the officer at the gatehouse. I walked through the gates of Camp 48. The sun was shining. The air was crisp. I had survived. At the train station, awaiting transport to West Germany, I saw a familiar man sitting on a bench. Petrov. He was old, stooped, his face etched with the years. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "Hartmann?" I sat beside him. "Still alive," I said. "Sorry to spoil your gamble." He remained silent for a long moment. Then he pulled a bottle of vodka from his pocket. He took a swig. He offered it to me. I accepted. Sokolov died 3 years ago, Petrov said. Heart attack. He never spent the money he won. And you? I lost everything. The bet, my career, my family. He gazed at the horizon. You cursed me, Hartmann. The day I bet against you, you cursed my entire life. No, I replied. You cursed yourself. I boarded the train. I crossed the border. I returned home. Ursula was waiting, older, with graying hair, but still beautiful, and beside her, a 10-year-old boy. My son. Father, he said. I knelt. I embraced him. I wept for the first time in 10 years. I lived for 63 more years after that day. I flew again. I taught pilots. I recounted my story. I died in 2003 at the age of 93, in my bed, surrounded by my family. Petrov wagered 800,000 rubles that I wouldn't survive. He was wrong. And this, my friend who is listening now, is the greatest victory a man can achieve. To prove that those who bet against you were completely, utterly, irrevocably wrong. So tell me this. When someone bets against you, when they say you won't make it, that you're not strong enough, that it's impossible, will you give up? Or will you do as Erich Hartmann did? Will you survive simply to prove them wrong? If this story gave you chills, if you felt every second of that Siberian cold, hit the like button now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Because the next story I have for you is even more impossible. And I promise you, you won't be able to stop watching.